you're more than welcome to start.
Doesn't matter. Well,
All right.
Welcome to the podcast.
Uh, welcome to the podcast. I guess for right now we'll call it the Awaken Men podcast.
That sounds good.
That we're coming on board, and this will be our first one between Daniel and myself.
Yeah.
So what's all of this going to be about? I know we talked about it, and this came on the fly, Daniel. So what were you thinking? Let's talk about what you and I are thinking about all of this.
Yeah, I mean, my intention would be to have a podcast that we can help. The word that's coming through is mold the new man. Because when I asked Spirit what a man was or what the divine masculine was, the answer I got is it doesn't exist. You have to create it. Like, there's actually no really great models on the planet. So I just, through this podcast, want to create what the new man is in the new world and see how that comes together.
It's so funny because when I started my journey about what is a man, I got the same thing. It's like there's no definite answer to what a new man is nowadays. We only have like the old models, the models of just the extremely masculine part of it, not the balanced type men that we're trying to strive to be now.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think any of us had well, maybe someone did, but a father that showed that. So it's just interesting being a man at this time, because there's this weird conflict within us, and probably some guilt too. So it's like this interesting web that we're trying to put together.
Yeah, between the Me Too movement and then everything going on just now, there's a lot of things where, men are being shaken up in every aspect, I feel. And it really is beginning to show. It's like, okay, so what kind of man do we need to be to help our society prosper, I guess, is the only way I can see it. The concept for me of a man, it's like after all my journeying of through this process and actually going to different types of meditations, I even did Vipassana, and I do some workshops and watch all these videos and all of that. For me, I guess let's start with that. My definition of a man is just I'm confident in who I am, and that's really it. I used to think it's this trait and that trait, but really it becomes confident in being that you're that masculine man that feels comfortable speaking your mind and speaking your truth, with a love, with love and kindness, not anything that will be very hurtful to other people. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, that's perfect. I mean, I always make this joke. People would be like, and I would be coaching or counselor, I'd be like, what is a man? And I'd be like, someone with a penis. And, that might not even be true anymore, but like, that's really the basis of it. And I know that sounds just ridiculous, but really from there, you get to create what you are as a man. There is no definition of it. It's just, that's really, you're born that way. And then you can go any branch you want to go, because there's obviously healer type men, there's warrior type men, there's kings, there's service type, all different aspects that we can take on. But really, I guess there is no definition. I guess for me, you got to make your own. I guess that's the advice I would give to other people. Like, what is a man? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me what a man is. I don't really know.
That is a good point, because we all have our own stories of what a man is. And it really comes down to what our definition of a man is. No, like, your definition would be, like you just said, it's like there's no definition. It's just what you feel, the other person feels that the man is. But I do feel that there is some masculine energy that has to go with it that I feel has caused some conflicts. It's like some traits of masculine energy are healthy, but it's being used in a very unhealthy way. And I feel that's probably one of the most important aspects about being a man is that you learn to express them in a healthy way.
I definitely think that's true. And I think we're learning how to do that. Like, how do we be motivated, driven, the protector, the provider, but in this healthier way, not in this competition, old way, I guess, of providing. I'm going to take care of everything, but my health is going to be horrible and I'm going to drink a scotch when I go home. That's, not that's like, I'm thinking of Madman for some reason. I mean, we're still not that far away from that's what a man was. So,
yes, I agree.
I mean, that was the definition. So, what is it now? Like, how does a provider look if there isn't money in that system, right? Like, what does it look like? Like, how do we provide? Is it emotional? Do we provide emotionally? Do we provide physically? Like, how do we provide? I guess I don't know why that's coming up, but that just feels important.
Yeah, that whole aspect of what is the old way of being a man, I feel is very important. Not in the sense that that's what we should be, but that's what we learn for. I'm a big believer that history teaches us what we shouldn't do, but our society has a tendency of repeating that over. So now as we're getting to this new age, and trying to define the man, I feel that we should use history to learn from it and not try to repeat it.
Right, exactly. I mean, because men have been all over the place. I mean, you look at history from ancient Greece, and kings wore really bright colors, and that's what a man was at one time, and then it became a warrior, and then it became a suit. Like, it's all over the place. I mean, women one times were the leaders, when we were matriarch. I mean, you go way back. Like, it seems like there's an ebb and flow of what a man is.
That is a very good point. It will change. I mean, it's always changing, right? I mean, that's part of our human nature. We're always going to be changing. So what we say now might change next century or something like that, or maybe just tomorrow, next year, or tomorrow, or whatever. Especially with that, But I feel that we're becoming now into a point that we're trying to discover the harmony with nature, the harmony with us individually to each other. And we really haven't had that. At least it doesn't feel to me like we had that for quite some time now, because the Industrial Revolution, then, the women's suffrage there, then they had, we can go way back then, slavery, ownership of people. I mean, all of that, I think, has really changed what is now defining a masculine trait or a man, or however you want to say it. And it's going to be interesting to see where we are in the next few years.
Mm. Yeah, because I think everything's going to shift in the next 2 or 3 years. I know I can feel it. We're kind of at this like tipping point as a society. Like, it's going to go somewhere. And I'm kind of excited to see what's on the other side, because I'm like, well, it's only going to be better, hopefully. It's the idea. It probably can't be super much worse. So I'm excited to see what's over that horizon, because I think it's all shifting so fast.
Yes, definitely. The shifting winds are here, and where we take it, I mean, it really is an open route to whatever we want to do. I mean, I think that's the best part about all of this, is that we're getting to define it. We're at the very beginning of a new age, in my opinion, of redefining things that we've never really had a definition for. And even then, those definitions are always going to be fluid. So I'm really excited. I'm with you on that one, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like being in a turning point of history, which, I mean, even the fact that there's a podcast talking about what's a man, just in general, that wouldn't even be possible. Like, that's already ridiculous. If you looked at 30 years ago, someone would, looking at what we're doing would be like, what are these people doing? Bunch of pansies. But like, maybe I'm channeling my inner madman guy. But yeah, it's just super exciting. And I guess it keeps on coming up, like, how do we be emotional providers as men? Because I think the old providing was money and that stability, and I think that's still important. But being an emotional provider as a male, I think is becoming more important. Like that to me is the new way of providing that I just made up right now. So, what do you think of that? I guess providing emotionally.
I'm with you there, and I feel the biggest trait that we're changing right now is we have to be vulnerable. We've been taught so much not to be vulnerable, and in order to be there emotionally, we have to open ourselves up and allow ourselves to be open. Because I hadn't, at least in my background, in my history, in my family, I never really saw a man being vulnerable. And I used to think that was weakness. And as I got older, and then it's like that became my story. And I decided at a certain point, when my brother got killed in 2009, it really hit me very hard that I didn't know who I was. And I found true strength by being very vulnerable. And I can't really explain it. I hope I'm making some sense for that, because being more vulnerable showed me the power of being vulnerable. It's like, oh man, I'm a strong individual that I'm able to open myself up. And that in turn allowed me to emotionally connect with individuals at a level I've never seen. And it's amazing.
Yeah. So you'd say vulnerability is like true courage in your eyes.
Yeah. Because, imagine putting yourself out there. Right here, we're talking. I talked about a little bit of my past. I can go into it more, but we'll be here for years. But just being vulnerable, being able to allow your emotions through, being able to cry. How many times are you, at least for me, I was never really allowed to cry very easily. It's like, or are you supposed to go in the back and cry in the back or do this? But no, it's like the power really is in that, I call it the masculine feminine energy, where you can be very vulnerable and allow those emotions to flow through.
Yeah. Even in this moment, I'm feeling emotional just because. So I had this dream of doing this podcast and working with men, and it's almost coming true, and that's almost scary in a weird way. Like I'm watching my dream come true, and I'm like, oh crap, now what do I do now? And you can feel like, yeah, this almost sadness but happiness coming through at the same time, which is beautiful. It's just interesting to have that experience.
Well, I'm with you there, and I'll take it for me. I'll show you how far I've come. And man, I even get all choked up saying this. So I've been trying. I have an IT business, and during my whole awakening, I actually been feeling it's like, oh, I should be working with men, and for whatever reason, I hold back. And full disclosure here, I'm being very vulnerable. And at times, I don't understand what holds me back. It's like being, I do work with men, but I haven't made it like you. It's like, that's one of the things I admire about you. It's like that you've taken it on and you're starting to do a lot of the coaching, and that's where I'm gearing to, but I've been gearing towards it. So it's like, and that's the part that's been kind of holding myself back, and it's been driving me crazy. So when we started talking and you said it's like you wanted to do a podcast also, it's like I said, all right, this is my sign, and I'm ready to go.
That's awesome. Well, that excites me because I wanted to do a podcast too, so it's perfect. And yeah, just knowing when it's the right time and listening to that calling. And I think that's part of being a man too, right? It's that I'm going to do whatever spirit, your heart, your life, whatever word, the universe, God tells me to do, nature. That to me is, even in history, what a real man would do, right? Would follow that calling, from the ascended masters to, just people in general. It's just taking that risk, because a man is, I picked the fool card today, but it's kind of a fool at some point, right? It has to take the hero's journey and take the leap and into
Yes.
the unknown.
Yes, definitely. The leap into the unknown, and even with all the work, internal work that I've done, the leap into the unknown, I can go into it in some parts of it, but there's still some other parts where I struggle with it, and it's opening those vulnerable places that hold me back sometimes. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna be exposed, or I'm gonna show this side or that side, and I'm probably one of the most comfortable people around. Well, now after everything with men, it's like I used to be very afraid of a certain type of man just because of the way I grew up. So it's like, oh man, they're being this way. It's like, I can't talk to them, or I would say, oh look, they're more of a man than I am. And so I feel a lot of those things for me have been getting healed just by the process of doing certain things like this. Now I'm being extremely vulnerable in this podcast. I'm allowing myself to share myself, well, to our listeners here that we're gonna have, and to you right here. And we don't have a video podcast right now, but I'm Skyping, and we're doing a video with Daniel here. So him and I are looking at each other while we talk. So it's interesting feeling that, and oh, I don't know, it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, and I think that open dialogue with men is so important. I know for my healing was so important going to men's groups, and I went to them at music festivals, so that was my door into it. And being a therapist myself, I ran groups, but just having that open dialogue and being vulnerable, because I think men before were very isolated. And yes, we would go out and drink together, but like emotionally isolated. Like we were like little kids in a cell of emotions. And you see your grandparents, they drink, they're like that. Like, and they explode in anger because they're in their cell of their emotions. So now we can actually open them out. So then we don't hurt women and other people because we're not holding on to these emotional baggage.
Yeah, and that's a big part, I feel. The reason I feel is domestic violence. There's like, it's really weird because you can feel the person that's doing that domestic violence, because I was on the board of United Way, and we went to some of the places of domestic violence and those different type of things, and you could tell that the man is very insecure in those situations. If it's a man doing that, and they're, instead of being vulnerable to their partner, they don't express it, and then when they're angry that they can't do that, they express it physically. And I feel that's where I'm talking about the vulnerable. It's like the power, I think they call it power over, I think. And having that power over their partner is really a way to mask their vulnerabilities. And, and it's like, no, I'm not going to go there, but so I'll do it this way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was a therapist and with people that arrested for domestic violence. And usually it was because they were in an emotional prison. I mean, they were usually abused, usually way worse than what they were doing. And not that it's a comparison, but usually, I mean, if you've heard the stories, I'll keep them secret for the people, but when they could express their emotions in a group of men, it seemed like it went away. Like they became nicer because they weren't alone in that situation. And they never had that experience before where they could be open in a group. And they usually were good people. They just, drank too much and, were in bad relationships and had horrible role models. And, I think everyone's good at heart deep down.
I agree.
No matter what they've done.
I totally agree with you on that one. I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, since you work with them with therapy, what did you see a common trait on those people that were being like that? Is it just the emotional part that, or was it like childhood stuff, or a combination, or what do you feel?
I mean, it was usually trauma in childhood, either extreme neglect or extreme abuse. Like to I don't want to go into like the details because it
No,
doesn't
no,
feel
go
right,
ahead. Yeah.
but like the like not just a little bit, like extreme levels. And I think we don't know how. Like I grew up in like an upper middle class neighborhood and thought, oh, I had some issues at home. I'm like, oh my god, like there's some neighborhoods and some places where you're like, and I don't want to like, I'm not discriminating, but I'm just from the work with addiction and domestic violence. I'd be like, oh, no wonder you're doing this. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like there was this like knowing of, well, you're actually alive. Like thank God, because what you came from is so horrific. And it's not 100% of the time. I do think I think Teal Swan talks about this, but I agree. Like most people have been emotionally, especially men, have been emotionally neglected by parents or people in their lives. Doesn't mean your parents, whoever you grew up with. And that's horrible on your emotional system. And I think that comes out in weird ways. And it doesn't look like abuse. It's just like you didn't get enough attention when you were crying. If someone told you you're crying and you're like, you can't cry, well, that's like emotional neglect. I mean, that's a minor form of abuse towards the person. And that at a young age can really escalate into adult age. So it's surprising what little things can make a big difference on our systems.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, uh, I the way we grow up, I've seen it because I do different type of work with men of the work that I've done, and there's always a factor or some trigger. There's always one trigger in their life that reacted or created this point, and it's hard because that, like, even me with my own healing, there was things that I thought it's like, oh no, this is normal, and never realized that wasn't normal. And I had to define that to myself. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So what if that's not what I like, or if that's not normal for me, then what is my normal? And that was another quest that I had to go. It's like, what is my definition of what I want to be like that?
What do you mean exactly? I guess I got lost with the normal part. If you can dive into that a little more.
Okay, so like the normal, it's like I know we hashed it out at the beginning, but like, what is a man? It's like,
Right.
what is that normal man? It's like, is there such a thing as a normal man? And what is that? So I had to find the definition of that for myself.
Got it. Got it.
So did that make sense? Did that clarify a little bit?
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, I get long-winded, so you can always tell me to stop and get. I'm cool. I'm one of those type of guys that it's like, you know what? It's like, you won't hurt my feelings. Just straight out tell me, and if you're okay with me being vulnerable with you and you're vulnerable with me, then hey, we're in it together.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. No, I just got lost, so I want to make sure I understood and asked the question. Yeah, I don't know what a normal man is. I mean, and I think there's some freedom in that because then we can just be, I guess, and exist with who we are if we don't have to define it. Because that can become a never-ending quest of what is, you go on it because you need to, but then you almost got to give up on it because you're like, well, I'm just gonna be me who I was anyways, and I was already good in the first place. Like, what was I searching for? It's always, it's the Jesus journey and the Buddha. They all had that same journey, right? They went and looked for something, and then they went, oh crap, I ate a grain of rice, and now I got to go back.
That is very true. Because we search so much that we can get lost in that searching. I know I did it. That happened to me where it's like I finally had to realize it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm searching for this, and I already am it. And it's not in an ego way. It's just recognizing that, hey, you really are everything that you can be. And you can choose who you are anytime. Whoever I am now, I can change it tomorrow or in just a couple minutes, however I want to be. But now I came to the realization I have a choice. And that was another powerful aha for me.
I think sometimes as men, I'm getting this image, like we have to run up a mountain to like become the man we need to be when we were already the man before we started that run. It's like we keep on running and running and running towards something, and then we'll be a man, right? Like once we get that big house or the car or whatever, indoctrination or the pretty wife or the company built, then I'm a real man. But then we look at those, those people who have the same issues we do. So and that's, I think, the feminine aspect with the male is, okay, like, stop chasing, like just stay here. You're okay where you are.
Yeah, that definitely, and you bring up a good point. That's where we have to be balanced in both ways, the masculine and the feminine energy. And when we're in that balanced state, it will help us find those answers. And I do, and I think I'm going to change the definition of what a man is, and I go with you. It's like, and let's not put a definition on it, and just let it be whatever it's going to be to you.
Yeah, and that's all different for each person. I mean, whatever you feel like that calling of your personal heart is. I mean, it could be the businessman. I mean, that might be your drive, or it could be the tech life, or it could be being a healer. There's no right or wrong direction. It's just, what does your heart calling say it is? Because we need all different examples, right? Yes. We need the Tony Robbins example, and we need the Dalai Lama example.
Yeah, those are definitely two extremes there. That yeah, I would love to see them two in a room. It's like that. Tony Robbins energy, and then the Dalai Lama right there on the side. Now talk about a show right there.
Right? And they're both men. I mean, they're just different cards, right? You need all the playing cards to make a deck, so you can't just have one. That would be really boring. And that's, I guess, what the past is in history. All the men were just the same, and all the women were just the same. And then they were like, this is what a woman is, this is what a man is. A man does this, a man opens the doors, which is all cool if you want to do that. But then everyone's the same, and that's really boring. then there's no freedom.
I like variety. I will go on record right now. I like variety. So I have all the choices. I enjoy all the choices that we have. And even now, just through this podcast, I'm redefining some things just by us talking, just by being open to it. And that's the only thing I can recommend to everybody. Just be open and don't resist it, and just flow with it. Whatever comes in, try to follow that.
Right. And know you're always supported. I mean, from living out the full archetype of jumping and leaping and leaping and leaping over and over again, like, and I still don't believe it sometimes, like how ridiculously supported we are in going after our dreams. Like if we go after it, the universe does provide, or whatever it is, or life, or people, if you're going after your dreams, people provide for you. I mean, they like that energy. Mm-hmm. So they want to support people going after their dreams and doing crazy things. Because that's the courage that it takes a man, just to go after their dreams, or whatever that is, or your calling, right? Because that's the example we want to give. We want a bunch of people going through their callings, whatever that is. I don't care, but because that's going to create the new world. It's going to give us out of this slavery. We're all the same. Let me work this job that I hate, which is the old man, right? I'm going to sacrifice my happiness to provide for my family, which is it doesn't work.
It's interesting also, you were talking about how we want to do that searching and searching and searching. And so that is a very masculine trait we're so used to doing. It's like, let's do it. And we get lost in that do it.
Yeah. I agree. Like in the Instagram world, and I'm starting this Instagram to just get my message out there. And literally my message in the business world is the opposite. Like people are just like, do it, work harder, hustle more. And like it's funny because they don't come into my reality till recently. And I'm like, I have so much resistance to this. And it's not that I can't do it, but I'm just like, this is so old. It's almost like, it's like my basketball coach is still like telling me to hustle. And I'm like, there's importance in that. But if our society needs anything, it's to slow way down. Like,
oh, yes.
Like if our society just needs a big stop sign, and things would go a lot better.
I agree. That's the tech life balance that I talk about. in my website, techlifebalance.net. And in that, it's very important to me. For me, that it took, with my brother getting killed, it took that for me to slow down. And when I slow down, I feel society pushes us so much that we need to get there. We got to do this, and we got to get the American dream, and all that kind of stuff. And in that, we're never slowing down. And when we slow down, that's when everything starts popping up. It's like, oh my goodness, I never dealt with this. So I never dealt with that. And it's, oh man, it just becomes this whole pile of stuff. and I feel that the slowing down is the most important part.
Mm.
Even if it's 5 minutes, just to take 3 deep breaths and just take like 15-second breaths and just deep in and out and slow down. And that helps me tremendously, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just meditation, anything to slow me down I even took a whole weekend, 3 days, and I asked my inner child, what do you need? And I, created this podcast, and I created a program, and what else? And created a men's group all at once. And I didn't realize how much I've been pushing my business for 2 years, and I got time off work, which doesn't happen for me. And I was like, what do I do? My inner child's like, can you just have a vacation and just watch shows and play video games and hang out for 3 days? I really need that. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't done that forever. And I didn't go anywhere because that's chasing too, right? I'm going to go chase the excitement vacation. And I've never felt better. I feel like a rejuvenated person. I'm like, holy cow. And it was just because I needed to slow down. And especially, and it doesn't mean you don't push at some points. I needed a push for that time, but it's taking advantage of the times we can slow down, like the holidays, and not because people will create something to push for even when they don't need to.
Oh yes, yeah, I think we're all guilty of that because it's so easy. I mean, we have so much thrown at us all over. I mean, just go down the highway and you get billboards about, oh, you're missing this, or I mean that the underlying message of a lot of the marketing is you're missing this. Your teeth aren't wide enough. Your business is low, so you need more signage, or there's always more and more and more, and we get into that. It's like, oh, I need that, and once you get that, it's like, oh, now I need that. Oh, now I need that, and once again, taking that break, like with you, it's like listening to us and slowing down and listening to that inner child and saying, it's like, okay, take a break.
Right. Enjoy life a little bit because you're going to get there wherever that is. And I mean, that's kind of, I think, the sadness and the weird thing that came up when I did this podcast. I'm like, oh, I'm doing the thing I wanted to have. And you think you're going to be happier, but then it's just, there's another thing. Then you're like, oh, this and this. So it never ends. So it's like, where am I going to? And it doesn't mean you don't pursue those things, but that running up the mountain isn't going to make you happy once you get there. I mean, that's the case.
Yes.
It'll be for a second. But
well, it's interesting because now it's this is the first time as I've tried a couple of podcasts, tried to start a few of them, and there's always been something that's been holding me back. And this one, I can honestly say I feel like it really is going to stick with me. I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm just kind of feeling guided. I guess I'm also committing to everybody here just by putting it on here. So that would be the way it helps me move forward too. Yeah.
No, I feel really good about it too. I mean, when I do these things, I would say one of my mentors is Kyle Cease. He talks about showing up in the room. So the more you show up in the space, the more you heal. And you just got to show up, right? And then the healing just happens. You don't have to do a great podcast. You just have to show up at the podcast. And you don't know where that's going to lead and that's going to lead. And, I want to commit to it too, because I feel like the more so that to me is a masculine trait is commitment.
I agree.
And in my journey, I went all the way feminine and I wasn't committed to anything. And you have to commit. And it doesn't mean you have to commit to everything. I'm not saying you can be monogamous. Whatever you commit to, it doesn't matter. But But if you don't commit to something, it can't happen. You're just going to flounder forever. So that's the balance of the feminine and masculine. That to me is someone that's masculine is committed to their word.
Yeah, I
Whatever
like that.
is.
I really like that because that is kind of very strong to do. What I call a to do thing. It's like, okay, you committed. All right, let's do it now. And it does take some. And once again, getting back to the discussion we had, it's like it's also being vulnerable. Like now here we are doing the podcast, not knowing where it's going to head, and just being here and showing up. And we just showed up. I love what you're saying about Kyle Cease because I really like his work, and I hadn't heard that before, but I really do. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's my own wording of it, but yeah, I know my life totally changed once I started committing more. And I went on a feminine journey of I'm just traveling hippie guy, and it was fine, but like I couldn't create anything without commitment, and it feels so good. And I guess that's what I see in the spiritual community that kind of I'm not saying annoys me, but that's the right word. It's like a pet peeve when people can't commit. But I think it's because I know that I can't create with them if they're not going to commit. It's just like a way I know a boundary in me. Like I can't work with people that aren't going to show up, which I guess this makes sense. That's why you fire employees if they don't show up.
That's very true. You know that it's interesting because as you were talking about that, I do feel that too. It's the spiritual community. They talk about the spiritual aspect of being in the flow and being guided to this. You're right. It's a very there are some people that are very non-committal to it. It's like, oh, I'm going to be here, but I'll be here around the time that I'll be here. You know, sort of, kind of, I'll be here. It's like around this time, or I'll sort of do that, and I'll get that. I do understand that. There is a lot more of that, and I feel as we start integrating all these aspects, the masculine and feminine energies, that once we start realizing that we need both, we don't get rid. If you're a female, you don't get rid of the masculine. You balance the female and masculine energy. Us as men, we also have both of them, and we have to balance the masculine and the feminine in us too. And once we start doing that, I mean, I feel the world is gonna. Well, it already is. It's starting to shift in that sense, but we have to find that balance, like everything else,
Right.
like everything.
Well, I always think of a river when I think of flow, and the river is very committed. I mean, it knows what it's doing. I mean, it's committed to going downstream, right? Like it's not,
Yeah.
and that can be part of the flow. And again, it's analyzing flow in a deep way, but which is very masculine. But it's like sometimes the flow is fast, sometimes the flow is slow, sometimes it's committed, sometimes it's just hanging out. Like it's all different. But yeah, and these things that I get annoyed about are always things I've done. So it's just kind of funny. It's like I'm like watching my old self. I'm like that father, be like, don't make the same mistakes I made.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. A lot of the river is the Taoism. Tao Te Ching always uses that the river. I love that because it gives one example. I forgot what verse it is, but it talks about the river is flowing, and what does it do when it encounters an obstacle? It, like say there's a big rock that's blocking the water. Well, the water doesn't give up. It goes around it. And then eventually it's so consistent. Like, I love what you're saying. It's so committed that eventually it creates things like the Grand Canyon.
Right.
I mean, and that's because it was steady and it stayed with it. And wow, it was very flowy, very feminine. It was also very masculine because it was very committed and it moved through and it created this amazing thing now.
Yeah. Yeah, because even with my like coaching business, like I took a break, it felt like I was like, I don't know. And man, I have to build up the momentum again. And it's like, it's interesting because it's like when you stop, when you find your calling and then you stop, you almost got to like, it's almost like exercising, right? Like you got to like redo it all over again. But it's when you're committed and disciplined, things are actually easier. Like It's actually because you don't have to start off the momentum again.
Yeah, once you're in that flow, it keeps going.
Right.
So that's very powerful like that. You know, I've enjoyed this conversation. I definitely want to do this again. We're definitely gonna do this. We'll bring up a website and we'll have the podcast going. Right now, I'm committing to this.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah. Hopefully, we can get up to doing it weekly. I'm kind of challenging myself to do it weekly because I'm like, well, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, right now our formal commitment is bi-weekly, but if we can do one weekly, then we'll definitely do that. And I guess, I always like I work with another podcast, Exploring Possibilities, and I love what they do on that podcast. And we always have like a final thought. And I think having a final thought for us, would be really good. Or let's change it up, and how about using the tip for the tip for the week, or the tip or something like that? Making, what is it that we would do to make a difference in our life in the next week or so?
Tip. My meditation practice wasn't as great. Like, it was very sporadic. Like, I would do it like 3 or 4 hours, and then I wouldn't do it for a while very much. And I'm gonna meditate for an hour a day for the week, every single morning. So I'm committing to that.
No, that is awesome. Well, I've my commitment is let's see. So I've had this stuff in my house lingering all over the place. So I am committing to moving through that and getting it out of my house, or doing what I need. Just moving it where it won't be blocking my energy in my house.
Yeah, it's the best feeling in the world. I got rid of a couple of things. And I don't have much, but I did it again. And every time I purge, I'm like, oh, it's so great. It's like a weight off my shoulders.
I guess we'll end it with that. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah.
We'll stay tuned. We'll have a website ready for you guys. And I'm Mario Rosales. You can look me up at mariorosales.net or techlifebalance.net. And Daniel?
Yeah. Yep, I'm Daniel McNicholas, and you can search me on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Channeling the Cosmos. I do a lot of channeling and different work, kind of all over the place, but that's what I like to be.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah, thank you.